Now that we have covered NoSQL database with Firestore, let's discuss SQL database connections in FlutterFlow. Let's start with SQLite. Unlike traditional databases that rely on server, SQLite is compact and serverless, meaning it runs directly within your application. It doesn't require a separate server or manage or process data, making it lightweight and easy to set up. Also, it runs locally on the mobile device without needing to have a network connection. It's suitable for mobile apps that stores data on the device for the user and does not require internet whatsoever, or for security reasons, they want to keep everything on that application on the device, such as health record apps or personal finance tracker. To enable SQLite in FlutterFlow, navigate to Settings and Integrations and switch on the Enable SQLite toggle. In the database configuration steps, you'll need to upload your SQLite database file and assign it a name. This process is important for initializing the database when your app is launching. If you don't have a SQLite database, you can easily create one using tools like SQLite Browser. Simply download SQLite Browser, create a new database, set up your tables, and optionally add some data. After preparing your database, upload the file to FlutterFlow to integrate it with your app. So you can create your schema with SQLite browsers, and once ready, you are good to go. Next, we need to add queries. We can define both read and update queries. Let's do two examples where you want to read all products from the database. Next step, you need to add queries. You can define both read and update queries in FlutterFlow. Let's do two examples here. In this example, we will retrieve all products from the database. Notice here I'm using select keyword and start to retrieve all columns and rows from the database. In the output columns, you can map only the columns that you need, for example, ID, title, or descriptions. Here, you need to make sure you are selecting right data type that is mapped with your columns database in the query. You may now ask, what are variables? Variables make your query more usable and dynamic. For example, you can create a query that retrieves only a specific product in case you need to pass the ID of the product. That's where you add variables. We can repeat the same thing for adding, updating, and deleting a product in update queries. Let's try to add a query to add a new product by adding an insert query with only the title and description. There are a few steps you need to take to use these queries. First thing, you can use both selected widgets or the entire page to add the backend query for SQLite. When you select the SQLite queries for backend query, then you can select the query name that you defined. Notice only read queries will be displayed here. Once the backend query is set, then you can use that to retrieve the data, and the variable names will appear as the query name as well as the rows. Notice in this case, you will get the output row columns that you defined in your query. We usually use update queries together with actions. For example, when user click on a product button, we can add an action to add a product to the products table. In this case, you need to select the query and then add variables that need to be passed to the query. These variables are the one that you defined during writing your queries. For example, when you want to add a product, you may want to pass product title and product price. You need to pass that to your variables And that's it for this query to work. All right. This is how you read and update data from SQLite in FlutterFlow. Let's go to the next video and see them in a demo. Here is our scenario. So we have the addresses, which a user can have multiple addresses, right? And it has a title, it has a text as like the address, phone, and whether it's selected or not. So what we're going to do right now, we're going to go and create a SQLite table for addresses for this purpose. Let's go to SQLite browser, and let's start by creating a new database. So I'm just going to go and give it a name as course and save it. There we go. As soon as you create your database, it asks you to create a table. So I will create my address table. So let's start by adding the fields. I want an ID just to recognize the address. And that should be probably an integer. NN means not null. I don't want this to be null. It should be primary key, unique ID that I can recognize the address. And it should be auto-incremented as well, AI, which means we automatically add the ID for this. We cannot pass the custom ID for the address, which is okay. And then the next one is actually this address, in fact, be connected with a user ID. You can query all the addresses related to the user ID. So in this case, the user ID could be potentially a text, and that's it. It should not also be null. Beautiful. Then let's move on. We can also add title as a text. We can also add the address also as a text. And finally, selected, whether selected or not. Let's call it selected. We don't have a Boolean here, but we can have an integer, whether the default could be 0 as like not selected, or 1 representing the true, which means selected. So we're going to go and say not selected default, and that's it. Beautiful. So these are enough for our demo. Let's just go ahead and OK. And now we have a table with all of these fields. You can even create data as of now. So you can just go to the table and browse the data and add a new record here. As you can see, the ID automatically gets to 1, and then I can add the other columns. So let's add a user ID, just random. Let's add a title, an address, and the selected is going to be 0. Beautiful. That's it, because we're going to add addresses right now, and I just added 1 to see that when we query, nothing will appear. I just added 1 to show you for the first time when we query by user ID. Because the user ID doesn't match this user ID that is logged in, it does not show this. That was the purpose, but it was not required. We're going to add addresses dynamically to this table in our application. Let me just write all of the changes, and that's it. Let's go back to FlutterFlow. In the setting, I'll go to integration and enable my SQLite. I will make sure that I give it a name, plus I will upload my course DB right now. Beautiful. Once that is uploaded and ready, you'll see that you have read queries and update queries. Let's go ahead and write our very first read query. What do we want to do here? Let's name as all user addresses. So we need to write the select. And select, I select everything from the address table. But we don't want all the addresses here, right? We want the address that the current login user ID matches the user ID field, which means I need to use where, and the field user ID from the table is equal to, all right, equal to what? That's a variable, because user to user, when they log in, it may change. Let's go ahead and add a variable as user ID. It's not null, and it's in a string. Beautiful. Now I can use it here. So we need to do one more thing here, is that when you do this variable, you also need to make sure that you're doing with this single quote, because the user ID is going to be a string, and that indicates it right now. All right, so that's it. Let's actually map our column for output. What do we want? It's going to be actually the ID first. Let's put it ID. It's in a string. It's not null. Then we need the title. It might be null. What else we had? Address, which might be null as well, and selected. Selected in this case is going to be an integer, where it's either 0 or 1. Beautiful. This is our output query. Everything looks pretty fine. Let's add the query. We need one more query as well. Let's go to update query and say add user address. In this case, we also need user ID as in a string, which is not a null. And we also need other values like title, address, and whether it's selected or not, which in this case is an integer. Okay, so now we need to use insert to. Where do we want to insert? It's going to be our address table. And which field we are going to insert in this case. And that's going to be identified with the parentheses. Let's say it was the user ID. So that's the user ID. This is the column in our SQL database. The title, the address, and selected. As you can see, these are matching exactly as we have defined. To just refresh, let's take a quick look. There you go. Here's my column: user ID, title, address, and selected. ID is not needed because it's auto-incremented. All right, but what are the values? So we're going to start with user ID. The first one is going to be the user ID, and that's dynamic. Then we have the title from variable. Then we have the address. And finally is selected. And this is going to insert one row into the table. Beautiful. So let me just quickly also fix this, because the user ID should exactly be as name as the variable name here. Beautiful. Let's add. Now I have add user address query as well. So now how should we use this? I'm going to go back to my app, addresses. So what we're going to do right now, we're going to load the list of addresses in this list view. So if I now go to my widget tree, you see that I have a list view here, which has two containers. All right, let me just remove the second one. Beautiful. Let's go ahead and add a backend query right now. So I'm going to add a backend query for list view, and let's call that SQLite query. And then this is the read queries that we just created, all user addresses. Beautiful. And we need to pass the variable. So let's go ahead and pass the user ID that we define. And our user ID is the user that is already logged in, the user ID from authenticated user. Let's go ahead and create that. Beautiful. So let's open the backend query loading widget. And it's interesting. It says that if you also have this query somehow taking a little bit long, you can show a loading indicator like this, which is very nice. You can change that also here. Now I need to go and change this text. So let's go ahead and change the text here. And you'll see that you get all user addresses, the read query title and the row. If I open that, then I get the ID, title, addresses selected. This is exactly what we have defined in output columns. Let me go and select the title here, and that's the title. Since it could be null, we need to also pass a default variable, let's say unknown. All right, let's do the same for address. and also pass a default. Now we need to set the checkbox, but that's true or false, and we need to convert 0 and 1 to this. So the initial value in the checkbox property is here. So I can set that from variable, and then I can have a conditional value. My expression in this case could be the all users' addresses, let's say selected in this case, if that is equal to, the true is going to be 1. So if it's equal to 1, that means this is selected. And if it's not, then it's going to be disabled. All right, that's good. Let's confirm. Beautiful. Next, I already have created a page that has title, full address, and whether it can be selected or not. We need to redirect user to that page by clicking on Add New Address, which means in this case, we need to add a new action, navigate to add page address. That's good. So we're all set. Now let's go to the address. Now we're going to add an action on Submit button here. Let's go that on tab. Let's add an action. And if you now go ahead and search for SQLite query, you find read and update. Well, in this case, we want to do an update, right? We already created one query, add user address. We need to now set the variables. Beautiful. And the variables are going to be the user ID, which is the authenticated user, the user that is already logged in. And then the other values from the widget state, like the title. It will be the title field, the text field that we just added. And our address is going to be the address field from widget state. And we need to repeat the same thing as conditional value for the switch. Because we don't have 0 and 1 here, we have true and false. Let's go and set that from the widget state and say, if our switch is true, that means the value is 1. Otherwise, the value is 0. Beautiful. Let's confirm. All set. And after this is added, we need to redirect back user to the address page. So let's go and navigate this back. All right, that's it. Let's go ahead and test it out. Since SQLite as of now is not supported on web in FlutterFlow, I'm just going to go and use my FlutterFlow desktop. Make sure if you're doing this and your app is already opened, stop it and restart it again. All right, so the app is loading, products, I'm logged in already. So this is my email, all good. And let's now open the addresses, no address, beautiful. Even though we added one address in the database, because the user ID doesn't match with the user ID that is logged in, it doesn't appear here, which means the query is working. Let's go and add a new one right now. So I'm going to go and add a new address here. And let's just also select it, submit. Beautiful, it's added here. Let's do one more, office. And this time I'm not selecting that. Let's see. Beautiful, it's working as expected. And now it's time to practice, add more queries and use them in your application. Okay, now that you have learned SQLite and SQL concepts, it's time to learn to review an advanced SQL database, Postgres. In module 14, we have set up Supabase and even used Supabase authentication. Supabase uses PostgreSQL as its database solution. PostgreSQL or Postgres is one of the most widely used open source relational databases, known for its scalability, robustness, and advanced SQL support. It's highly extensible, making it a top choice for both small apps and large systems. Once you are in Supabase dashboard, you can access the table editor and start creating your tables. Creating a table is similar to what we already learned in SQLite video. You just define your columns and data types and relationship if you have any. Once you define your tables and columns, you can get the schema from Supabase in FlutterFlow dashboard. Then you can start using these tables in your backend queries, but this time the query type is going to be Supabase query. The difference now is that you have more visual helpers to create queries. Let's see what I mean. For example, you can simply select from loading a list of rows or a single row. So in SQLite, we have been writing our queries, but here we don't need to do that. Or you can use filters or ordering. We have already seen that these can impact your query. For example, you may add order by a specific field or column and choose between increasing and decreasing. After creating the backend query, you can use the table rows, which in this case products rows, to set variables for your widgets. There are also Supabase specific actions, including insert, query, update, and delete. Query rows are to retrieve the data. You may need to set fields for some action types, which typically map to data to the column name in the Supabase tables. The good part is that FlutterFlow will manage the data type conversion and create the proper SQL query automatically and accordingly. Beautiful. Now we know the basic here. Let's go ahead and see that in a demo. All right, here is my project right now. And in this project, after clicking on this button right now, we are adding a document to Firestore. So what I want to do, I want to also add this product to the PostgreSQL. So let's go and test it out. And then I want to load this list view as the new product from PostgreSQL. All right, so it's both insert and query. First, we need to go to the Supabase dashboard. All right, here's my Supabase and I can open my database. And as you can see, I have no tables right now. Let's go ahead and create a products table. There are some configuration that you can enable or disable. I will just leave them all as is, except I'm going to also enable real time on this table. If anything happens, then we also get it in real time. So it already has the ID, and that's the primary key, as you can see, which is an integer. And then we also have created, which is automatically create the now. So these are good. So now I want to add more columns. Let's go ahead and add the title. I'll come back and fix the types, and then I need description, price, sizes, and images. All right, let's go now and fix the types. For title, I'm going to select varchar, which technically means text. If you click on the setting icon, you'll see that you have some options. For example, it can be nullable, unique, or defined as an array. Okay, so all good. I'm just going to leave as is. The description, since it's going to be longer, then I'm going to just select the text. Price is going to be a double or float 8. And for sizes, we're going to go and select varchar, which is a text. But then I'm going to select this as an array in this case. And then images. I'll do the same here as varchar and array. Beautiful. So that's it. Let's go ahead and save. All right, my products table is created. Let's go to table editor. And if I select the products, you see that we have all the columns now available here. Beautiful. Let's go back to FlutterFlow dashboard to the setting. And we already had Supabase under integration, and we already added the API URL and the key here. We just need to get the schema in this case. And there you go. The products are now coming. And as you can see, the data types are also matched here. So look at this. These are the PostgreSQL type. Like, for example, here we had text or varchar. Both are going to be a string. Or we had float 8, which means double. Or varchar for sizes and images. And these are list of strings. Beautiful. That's exactly what we needed. All right, that's it. So now we have the products schema fetched here. So let's now go to product list. All right, what I'm going to do, I'm going to add another action to floating action button. So we already had create document for Firestore. So what I will do, I will just add another action right after that. And this time I'm going to search for Supabase. And now you see insert row. Beautiful. Let's select it. Where do you want to insert the data? Products. Now we need to set the fields. Let me go ahead and add the fields. You see that now if I add the fields, all of them are appearing here. Beautiful. So I don't need really ID and created at because they are going to be automatically created. So let's just remove both. And in this case, I'm going to go and set the title. Let's put that as a random value. I'm going to use a sample data for name. Get the first name. Let's do a random text for description. So I will just use random data for strings, maybe between 10 to 50. And also price. I'm going to just go and set the price for now as random. Going to be between probably 100 and 200. Okay, now, actually, I don't need sizes. Let me just delete the sizes as well. And let me also just go and add images. I will just generate list of images from sample data in case we want between 1 maybe and 3. All right, beautiful. So now we're going to have a list of images as a string here. So these are all of our data. Very good. So we are adding this product as soon as we're adding that to the Firestore. So let me just close this. And the next one is we're going to load this data. So let's go and select this list view. And in the backend query, I can now add a new backend query from Supabase query. And then I can select the products. And the type is going to be list of rows. I want a list of products here. If you already know which product you want, maybe single row is the one that you want. But for now, I need a list. And maybe here I just set a limit to 6. And let's add an ordering based on created at and decreasing, like the newest at first. Beautiful. You can even add filters based on different fields, but I don't need it right now. I'm just going to remove. Beautiful. Let's confirm. In the backend query loading widget, I will make sure that I have the project theming loading indicator. So at least I have a loading when a loading is happening. And then I will go to the product item. Now we are passing the components parameters, and these are not known anymore because we are using a different variable. So we need to now use the products row in this case. So in this case, it's going to be a unique one for key, which is the ID. I will repeat that again for the ID. So let's pass the title and price and list of images, which in this case, we want only the first one. Before I run the demo, I want to emphasize on one more thing, and that's the security policy. So if I go back to my Supabase dashboard, you will see that we have the product, and the product tables that we created has a public schema. In fact, in Supabase, you get some pre-default schemas, for example, auth for protecting your table, as well as you can create your own. The products table is already in public schema. However, when we created this table, we had a RSL policy enabled for rows. And so far, we have not set any policies here. And that's why if you want to try to get access to these tables to get rows or add or delete, you cannot do that right now. So I'm going to go and add this. And you see that there is no policy. And what I'm going to do here, I'm going to create a policy, or you can disable it right now. So in fact, for production, I would recommend you to keep this on and create proper policies. However, for now, for testing, I can disable this. So as you can see, it's just warning us that right now, the table is publicly readable and writable. Like everyone can read and write to this table, which is not really optimal. All right, that's it. Let's go back to FlutterFlow desktop app and restart the application. All right, the app is loading. There's no product here. Let me just add one. It doesn't appear. It's just because we need to reload this product. So let's just go here to another page, come back, and the product is appearing. There you go. Let's add another one. Go here, come back, and there you go. The product is added. All right, beautiful. Let's go back to the Supabase dashboard. And now if you look at the table editor of the product, you see we have two products appearing here. That's nice. Beautiful. And that was all about the PostgreSQL in this demo in Supabase. All right, as always, now it's time to look at the generated code. Here is my application, and I'm going to start with pubspec YAML file. Take a look at the dependencies. And this time, you will see that we have Cloud Firestore dependencies. We do have also Firestore and packages such as Postgres, as well as SQLite. Okay, so let's go and take a look at the lib folder. Now, if I open my backend folder this time, we're going to have more folders available. And first one, as you can see, is going to be the SQLite. And the SQLite in this case is going to have the queries, as you see the read. And here is your queries that you have written. And they are just appearing here. Beautiful. And another one is going to be the update queries. And these are the update queries, as you can see. And here is where we have written our query. And if you look at these variables, they are passed to this function that is created, perform the add user address, the one that we just named for this query. The init.dart file is going to write everything related to initialization of the DB file. And here is my DB name that we just put it there, the path of the database, and I show you where is our DB. And as you can see, the location is under assets and SQL DB files. Let's take a look at that. And there you go. Here is our DB file, which is now under the asset, which means it's going to be bundled with our application. Let's see where we are using this function. Let me just get a reference. And here is where we are using this function to initialize under the SQLite manager and with initialize function. And we do also have all of the queries that we defined here in the SQL manager. So that's beautiful. We have the SQLite manager and the location is just right under the SQL folder. Let's see where we are using the SQL manager right now. If I take a look at the references, you see the first reference is going to be in main.dart when the app is loading. And let me just open that. And as you can see, we are now initializing the SQLite as well. So we are making that ready in order to perform our queries. Beautiful. This is just like what we have done with initialize Firebase, or here is another one for Supabase. Now let's take a look at the schemas that we created for our PostgreSQL. So here is like the database tables like products, And as you can see, they are appearing as a product table, which is going to extend. For example, we've been using Supabase here. And then you have each row, which is defining the columns that you define and map that to the FlutterFlow types in this case. Beautiful. All right, let's take a look at Firestore right now. So one of the things we've done, we've been creating the order records here. Let's just take a look at that. And that's the Firestore record for orders record. If you look at this, what it does is actually getting all the fields that we have created here. And then it also creates a few queries for us. Like, for example, it automatically gets the Firebase stores instance and then get the collections of orders. The collection group in this case is going to get all the sub collections on their users for orders. This is because we created orders as sub collection. And let me take a look at the products in this case. So we have now the products and the data, and these are the fields that we defined, that the description, price, images, and even some helpers, like if it has images or not, sizes, and initializing the field, which in this case is just mapping these types into the FlutterFlow types. We also have the collection here. When you say in FlutterFlow, I want the collection products, in fact, this is what is going to happen. It's going to just reference the Firebase Firestore instance and then call the collection on product. Here is our path, the products collection. Beautiful. And you also have get document, which you need to pass ref. And if you look at this here, it's from a snapshot, and that returns a stream here. And that's why, so you have been using the real-time data in all the queries. And if you enabled, in this case, like once, so this is what is going to happen. It's just turn that into a future. Beautiful. So there are other also functions here that you can take a look as well for serializing and deserializing all of these fields. For example, when you create a product record data, when you pass these parameters, you in fact, FlutterFlow is mapping them to Firestore. So this is how FlutterFlow is handling everything behind the scenes for products in this case. All right, beautiful. Let's see how we are using this when we add the backend query. I'm going to open the product list page. And I'm going to search for list view where we had a list of product records. So let's take a look at this part. When you are adding here a backend query, you see that you're going to have a stream builder, which it tells you a list of product records. And that is going to get the query that you are creating. You remember we had a query on the products and we ordered by price as descending. There you go. And the limit of 10, that's all those queries we've written is just happening to be here. And this stream builder is going to listen to this query all the time. You can take a look at this function as well, and you see that is in fact a stream of list of records. Beautiful. And then we're building our application. And if there was no data, you remember we added the loading. Here is the loading indicator or progress indicator. And if the data was available, then we've been showing the data in this case. Let's take a look at floating button. Here's our floating button where we added product here. So on top of this floating button, we've been calling the products record, which we just explored on the collection, and we got just a doc and then called the set function. This is telling to the Firebase that if there is no product, go ahead and create it. And if there is, go ahead and update it. So that's beautiful. So, and then you see that we are also passing these parameters, which FlutterFlow in this case are taking care of these data conversion with this function. So, and as you can see, we already added the random generator for names and prices, and they are also appearing here. And once we added this product and all is added, we've been awaiting for that. So then we also added another insert to the products table for our PostgreSQL. And that's what we have done so far. So we added the title, description, price, and images. All right, beautiful. So let's take a look at addresses right now. So the addresses was under the profile. And if I open the add address, let's take a look at submit button. Here it is. And on press of this submit, we've been adding user address, which it was actually adding that on the SQLite manager class. Beautiful. And this instance is saying this is a singleton, which means is a single instance. Okay, so now we're adding user address with all of the parameters that we defined. And if you look at this here, we're getting the data for title and address from our text field. And this is where it was. And the condition we added for switch also is appearing here, as you can see. If it's true, it's going to be 1. And if it's false, then it's going to be 0. And let's take a look at the address list page. And let's directly to the list view. And voila, here is our list view right now. And again, when we are creating a backend query here, in this case, we are adding a feature builder for SQLite. And that's going to read all our user address row, which we just added to our SQLite table. And it's reading all these. That's the query we just added. And we added that as a parameter, a user ID, which it was reading from the current user ID, which was the authenticated user. And that's only the future, right? Future builder, which means it's going to load this once. And that's why when we added one, we needed to refresh the page and see the new data. All right, so then we also added a loader. And these are also the data that we mapped to our list view, including getting like the title or also this address. And here is also, we build our item. For example, we've been loading the title of this row. Beautiful.